Howdy everybody. One of the daily chores that I do is to check the condition of the fence here that encloses the paddock for the sheep. It's an electric fence, and so we don't want things to be touching it, such as a branch or anything like that, because that can potentially ground out the fence and make it ineffective. And you can see the fence here. I'm using 2 strands of wire. This is temporary fencing. I move it on a regular basis. Behind there you can see the turmeric that's growing very well. And up above that is a papaya tree with papaya on it. They're not ready yet, but there's papaya on it. So I just walk along the fence and make sure that it's clean so that I don't wind up losing any sheep. Over in the distance, here's an avocado tree that I planted quite a while ago, and it's still doing pretty well. We've had a lot of drought, and that has really affected the avocado trees. Now this is interesting here. Let's stop here for a minute. When we first bought this farm, this hill that I've been climbing up was basically just rock, right down to the bedrock. Not just a bunch of rocks on a hill, but worn right down to the bedrock. Now this happens in Nicaragua, particularly in the mountainous region, because during the rainy season we get torrential rains that can literally just kind of wash everything away. And that's what had happened on parts of the farm here. And I took this on as a project, and one of the things I did was cut grass from other parts of the farm and laid it on here to cover the bedrock. Brought in compost that I made myself. It took a long time, took a few years to actually do that. And then planted fast-growing trees like Gliricidia sepium, Lucana, other trees that are very fast-growing. Also, Tithonia diversifolia, boton de oro, another very good plant. It's not a tree. And little by little, we built up a soil layer. It's not very deep, but a layer of soil that these trees could grow in. And then they started boring down through the bedrock and breaking that up a little bit. And that's kind of what has happened here. But even with all of that work, we still didn't really have a viable soil layer, because every wet season we'd get the torrential rain, which would wash away a lot of the work that I'd done. So we couldn't use a typical permaculture technique called building swales here, because we couldn't dig down that deep into the bedrock. I didn't have the equipment to do that, and I wouldn't have done it anyway. And so what I did instead was, a friend of mine in another area of Nicaragua had some special grass called vetiver grass. And here is a clump of it right here, vetiver grass. Now, vetiver is a special type of clumping grass that has a very deep root system. Here's clumps of it I'm showing right here. And it's used around the world, actually, but particularly in the more tropical areas, to control erosion. And down here you can see these rocks. This is soil that we built on top of all these rocks that now have kind of been broken up a little bit. It was basically one great big rock here at the beginning. So I planted a row of this vetiver grass with the idea that when we get the torrential rain, it would flow down from here and be stopped by the vetiver grass, almost like a wall, and that would create eventually a terrace, because the soil that was being brought would be deposited here. Well, that didn't work out so great. One reason is because the vetiver grass didn't actually grow very well here on top of the bedrock. It's done surprisingly better than I thought it would, but we don't have the huge clumps that you could see in other parts of the world that they use this for. But it did work to some degree, because I planted a row of Madero Negro, or Gliricidia sepium trees, fast-growing trees of that genus and species, right in front of the vetiver grass to help it even more. And that has had a terracing effect over the years. It hasn't been as strong as I would have liked, but it has had a terracing effect. So I decided to use a different approach and take advantage of what we have an abundance of here on the farm, and that is rocks. Originally, I was going to build a gabion, but what I wound up building was a small rock fence. Not very high. It's only about 30 centimeters high, but it goes all along the hill here. And then I decided I wasn't going to wait for the deposit of material naturally. I was going to help that along a little bit, and so I filled it in with compost and branches and cut grass and other things just to fill it in. And now there's soil there, obviously. As you can see right here, there's a coffee plant growing right here. There it is. And there's another one that I planted. So I was able to plant some trees in here. There's an annona back there that I planted as well. Now there's a terrace here. And what happens is when the torrential rains come, they first hit the vetiver grass, and any water that is able to go through and anything else that escapes is caught here because it's a terrace. And I'm getting ready to start another terrace right here where you see these big rocks. These were already here, so I'm starting to collect rocks to make another terrace here. This will be filled in the same way. And it's worked very well. Oh, I forgot to show you. Here's a mango tree also that I planted, doing quite nicely. It's probably going to start giving fruit in another year or two. So this worked spectacularly well. The rock wall here building a terrace. Now let me show you one last thing, because this was a failure. As you can see, there's these things here. Actually what it is, it's a piece of PVC tubing with a top and holes drilled into it. And these are what are called worm towers. Now, worm towers were a big thing a few years ago. You could see gardeners on YouTube talking about them quite a bit. Basically, you take something like a PVC tube, you put it in the ground, you have holes in it, and then you put material in there that the worms will eat. The worm castings will then become saturated when it rains, and all of that will spread out to the rest of the area around. And so I said, wow, this is fantastic. I have this terrace here. It's not particularly fertile soil, so let me see if I can boost the fertility with these worm towers. Well, it was a spectacular failure. So I built the worm towers. I put the material in there for the worms to eat, and I put a good number of worms in there. I checked on them a few days later, and they were all dead. And the reason why is because they were overcome with ants. Now, I know you have ants in North America too, but you don't have them like we do here in Central America. There's ants all over the place, hundreds of species of ants. And they were attracted to the food that was there for the worms, and they set up their own house in the worm tower, and that killed the whole project. You know, Gabe Brown, a well-known regenerative rancher and farmer, has said that he and his son check at the end of every year to see how many times they failed at things, because they consider failure to be a good thing. And if they haven't failed enough during the year, it's an indication to them that they haven't tried enough new things. And so I kind of like that perspective, and I've adopted that perspective for what we do on the farm here too. So the vetiver was a new thing. It worked out, but it didn't work out the way I had hoped it would. The rock gabions worked spectacularly well, and then the worm towers were an equally spectacular failure. So you go along, you try new things, maybe they work, maybe they don't. When they work, it's fantastic. When they don't, you simply move on. So I'm going to continue walking the wire here to make sure that it's clear, but you don't have to go with me for that. So I'm going to sign off, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks a lot for watching.